Imagine a government regulator controlling what you see on TV by threatening to yank a license. That's where U.S. Senator Ted Cruz says Jessica Rosenworcel and the FCC are headed. Cruz calls the FCC's threats against ABC dangerous as hell and likens them to mob tactics. But what really happened, and what it could mean for press freedom under the First Amendment, is more complicated than sound bites. Let's dig in. If you want straight talk about media, government power, and free speech, you're in the right place. Today, we break down Senator Cruz's dramatic criticism of the FCC chair, what triggered it, and whether it poses a real threat or political theater. We look at the timeline, the legal issues, the arguments on both sides, and what this could mean for journalists, broadcasters, and viewers like you. Make sure to stay until the end so you understand not just what was said, but what might follow. Background. The controversy. In recent weeks, Chair of the Federal Communications Commission, Jessica made remarks about ABC's coverage of political or controversial subjects, suggesting the network could face regulatory consequences for how it presents content. Critics felt those remarks were veiled threats to its license. The concern is that the FCC might penalize broadcaster behavior it perceives as biased or harmful. Senator Ted Cruz responded strongly, calling the threats dangerous as hell, accusing the FCC of overreach and comparing the behavior to intimidation used by mobs. The exchange has ignited debates over the boundaries between regulation and censorship, what the FCC actually said. According to public reports, Rosenworcel made statements in speeches and public appearances, warning that broadcasters must be mindful of disinformation, political bias, or violations of equal time rules, or else risk regulatory scrutiny. She emphasized the public interest obligation of broadcasters and implied that licenses could come under review if networks breach certain norms. ABC, in its reporting and commentary, has pushed back, saying it operates within journalistic standards and constitutional protections. The FCC chair's comments seem aimed at reminding broadcasters that regulation still exists and that political coverage is under public view. Ted Cruz's response. Senator Cruz said the FCC's comments are dangerous as hell because they foster a risk of chilling effect. He claims that if public media perceives license suspension or revocation threats for political content, they will Cruz argues this infringes on First Amendment rights. He framed the situation as a fight between press freedom and government overreach. He cited historical examples of when governments pressured media to toe a line. Cruz urges Congress to hold hearings and to preserve legal safeguards that protect broadcasters from political pressure, disguised as regulatory oversight. Legal framework. What FCC licenses mean. Broadcasting over public airwaves requires a license from the FCC. These licenses come with obligations: serving the public interest, maintaining decency standards, following rules on political broadcasting and equal time, etc. The FCC does have authority to enforce violations, issue fines, or in serious cases revoke a license. But such actions require due process. Legal precedents protect broadcasters when they act in good faith. Under First Amendment guarantees, courts have historically been wary of regulatory actions that seem punitive towards viewpoint or partisan speech without clear violations of law. First Amendment issues. At the heart of this debate is the First Amendment, which limits government power to punish speech. Free speech protections are strongest against government censorship. Just reminding a license holder about obligations is different legally than threatening punitive action for viewpoint. If the FCC is seen to punish ABC for content criticism or political viewpoint, it may violate constitutional protections. Legal scholars warn that even implied threats can chill speech if broadcasters fear regulatory retaliation. Courts often look at the actual conduct, whether rules are applied fairly, and whether warnings become punishments. Precedents and comparisons. This is not the first time concerns have arisen around regulatory oversight and political broadcast content. In the past, issues like fairness doctrine, now defunct, equal time rules, or campaigns against indecency have tested tensions between free speech and regulation. Comparisons to mob tactics are rhetorical, but convey fear of coercion. Previous FCC chairs have urged broadcasters to be responsible, but explicit threats of license revocation over political content are rare. Legal challenges in such situations often involve questions about vagueness, viewpoint discrimination, or irregular enforcement. Arguments in favor of FCC oversight. Supporters of Rosenworcel's position argue regulation is necessary. Broadcasters have wide reach and influence. They may promote disinformation, bias, or manipulate public opinion. Given that licenses use public airwaves, there is a public interest dimension. Rules around political content, accuracy, and balance are part of broadcasters' obligations. Some believe the threat of oversight is a needed reminder that free speech involves responsibilities. It is argued that, without regulatory pressure, some networks may become extreme outliers in factual distortion. Criticisms and risks. Critics say, oversight can easily slide into censorship. Once regulators begin targeting specific content or networks for a perceived bias, power can be misused. Ambiguity in what counts as bias, disinformation, or political distortion can allow selective enforcement. There is a risk of viewpoint discrimination, punishing one side more than another. Broadcasters may avoid covering controversial topics or push away dissenting voices to avoid regulatory scrutiny. The chilling effect could reduce diversity of speech. Critics also argue that the risk to independent journalism and public trust is too high if regulation suppresses valid journalistic critique. Political motives and messaging. Much of the tension around this issue comes from politics. Senator Cruz's criticism plays to his base that fears censorship and regulatory overreach. Rosenworcel's remarks resonate with those who believe broadcasters have not done enough to check misinformation. In public speeches, each side frames the narrative. Free speech versus responsibility. Regulation versus media outlets pick up different parts, depending on ideology. This becomes not just a debate about law, but a fight over how media should operate in an era of polarized politics, social media, and information overload. What we don't know yet, many details are still unclear. It's not yet known exactly which ABC segments or broadcasts triggered the FCC chair's remarks. It is unclear whether the FCC has opened any formal investigations or enforcement actions. It is also unknown whether ABC believes it violated any FCC rule and whether it would defend any claimed violations in court. Additionally, how other broadcasters view the implied threat is still emerging. Will they alter their coverage? Will Congress take legislative steps? These unknowns make it difficult to predict ultimate outcomes. Potential outcomes. Several scenarios are possible. First, nothing happens beyond public debate. No enforcement, no changes, only media coverage. Second, other broadcasters may self-censor to avoid regulatory attention. Third, Congress might introduce new laws limiting FCC's power over political content regulation or clarify rules. Fourth, legal challenges could emerge if ABC or another broadcaster claims overreach. Finally, this could escalate into landmark court cases that set new precedents for what government regulators can and cannot do when speech is involved. What this means for you and media consumers. For viewers, this debate matters. It affects what news and commentary you see. If broadcasters become more cautious, you may get fewer voices that challenge dominant views. If media feels pressured, topics could be avoided or framed more conservatively. For journalists, the concern is whether they can report freely without regulatory fear. For citizens, it raises the question of how we want truth, dissent, and accountability to coexist. Free speech doesn't come without tension. This episode is a test case. This FCC ABC controversy shows how delicate the balance is between free speech and regulation. Senator Cruz's harsh comparison to mob tactics casts a stark warning. But oversight does have a place. What matters most is transparency, fairness, and preserving constitutional protections. We may be witnessing a turning point in how media regulation is discussed in this country. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button and subscribe with notifications turned on. Share this video with friends, family, or anyone who cares about media freedom. Leave a comment below. Do you believe the FCC threatened censorship? Or was this just tough talk from a regulator called to act responsibly? Your thoughts matter. I'll see you next time with more. more deep dives on the stories shaping our world.